This message found you for a reason, not by accident, not by algorithm, but because you're caught in something most people will never even recognize: the observer loop. And right now, in this moment, you're about to discover why your life has been feeling like a repetition of the same scenes, the same conversations, the same limitations, over and over again. If you've been feeling like you're living in a loop, like time is collapsing, like you're having the same experiences just with different faces, you're not imagining it. You're experiencing it. And what I'm about to share with you is going to shatter the pattern permanently. Here's what's happening. You're stuck in an observer loop. This is when your consciousness keeps collapsing the same reality over and over because you're observing from the same frequency, the same identity, the same belief system. You wake up and think the same thoughts. You look for the same evidence of who you are. You have conversations that feel like reruns. Someone says something and you think, I've heard this before. You walk into a room and get hit with déjà vu so strong, it's disorienting. Time starts feeling strange, weeks disappear, or a single day feels like forever. This isn't just psychological. This is quantum. You're not moving through time linearly anymore, you're circling. You're collapsing the same probability field because you're the same observer. And the universe is simply reflecting that back to you. Let me paint this picture more clearly. You meet someone new, and within 5 minutes, you can predict exactly how the conversation will go. Not because you're psychic, but because you've had this exact exchange 1,000 times with different people wearing different faces. The words change slightly, but the energy is identical. The dynamic is the same. The outcome is predetermined because you're showing up as the same frequency. Or maybe it's your career. You switch jobs thinking this one will be different, and within 3 months, you're dealing with the same politics, the same frustrations, the same feeling of being undervalued or misunderstood. Different office, different people, same story. Because the story isn't out, there it's in you. It's the frequency you're broadcasting, and life keeps matching it with surgical precision. Your relationships follow the same pattern. Different person, same wounds surfacing, same arguments, same endings. You think, why do I keep attracting the same type of person? But you're not attracting them, you're collapsing them into your reality because you're observing from the same emotional frequency. The universe doesn't care about your preferences. It matches your vibration. Even your thoughts are on repeat. You have the same internal dialogue every morning. The same worries. The same hopes that never materialize. The same conversations with yourself about what you need to do, who you need to become, what needs to change. And nothing changes. Because thinking about change from inside the same consciousness that created the problem is just another loop within the loop. Time itself starts behaving strangely when you're in the observer loop. You'll have weeks where you can't remember what happened, it all blurs together into one continuous experience. Or you'll have a single day that feels like it lasted a month because you were so present to the repetition, so aware of the pattern, that time stretched out to accommodate your awareness. This is your consciousness trying to wake you up. It's showing you the glitch in the matrix. But most people just medicate it, distract from it, or convince themselves they're just stressed. The loop gets tighter the more aware of it you become if you don't know how to break it. You start noticing the pattern everywhere. You see it in the way people talk, the way situations unfold, the way your life keeps reorganizing itself around the same core themes. And this awareness can feel like a curse because now you can't unsee it. You're watching yourself live the same life on repeat, and you don't know how to step off the ride. Some of you are experiencing this in really specific ways. You keep seeing the same numbers, YEV, N, E, 11, 3:33 a.m., 4:44 a.m. Not occasionally, constantly, multiple times a day. and you've looked up what it means, and everyone tells you it's angels, it's alignment, it's a good sign. But it doesn't feel like a good sign. It feels like reality is stuttering, like you're being shown that there's a pattern running, and you're finally conscious enough to see it. Others are experiencing timeline bleed. You'll remember something that you're certain happened, but when you check, there's no evidence of it. Or you'll have a memory of a conversation, and the other person swears it never occurred. You're not crazy. You're experiencing the collapse of multiple probability fields simultaneously because your consciousness is no longer locked into one timeline. You're quantum jumping without knowing how to stabilize in any one reality. So you're flickering between them, and it's disorienting as hell. And then there's the isolation. Because when you try to explain this to people, they don't get it. They tell you you're overthinking. They tell you to just be present or let go. But you can't let go of something you're not holding. You can't be present when presence itself feels like a loop. So you stop talking about it. You stop trying to explain. And you start to wonder if maybe you are crazy. Maybe you are broken. Maybe there's something wrong with you that you can't just be normal like everyone else. But here's what I need you to understand. The fact that you're experiencing this means you're waking up. The loop is visible to you now. And visibility is the first step toward freedom. Most people live their entire lives in the loop and never once question it. They think repetition is just life. They call it routine, habit, the way things are. But you've seen through it. You've recognized the pattern. And that recognition is the crack in the matrix that we're about to split wide open. Let me be clear. You're not losing your mind. You're not broken. You're not overthinking it. What you're experiencing is real, and it's actually a sign that you're waking up to something most people will never perceive. You've become quantum sensitive. You're noticing the mechanics of reality that others are blind to. That's why when you try to explain this to people, they look at you like you're speaking another language. Because you are. You're operating on a different frequency band. They're still in the dream. You're starting to lucid dream. This quantum sensitivity isn't a disorder. It's an upgrade. Your consciousness has expanded beyond the default programming that most people operate from. You're no longer content with surface-level existence. You can feel the edges of reality, the places where it bends, where it repeats, where it's responsive to observation. This is a gift, even though right now it might feel like a burden. Think about it. Most people go through life completely unconscious. They react to circumstances without ever questioning why those circumstances keep showing up. They blame external factors, the economy, other people, bad luck, timing. They never stop to consider that they might be the common denominator in every situation they experience. They never ask, what frequency am I broadcasting that keeps collapsing this same reality? But you're asking that question. You're looking deeper. You're seeing patterns that are invisible to others. And yes, it's isolating. Yes, it's confusing. Yes, it makes you feel different, weird, like you don't fit anywhere. But that's because you're not meant to fit into the old paradigm. You're here to transcend it. The people who don't understand you aren't wrong, and you're not better than them. You're just operating at a different level of awareness. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's only ever seen in black and white. They can't comprehend what you're describing because they haven't had the experience. Their consciousness hasn't developed the receptors to perceive what you're perceiving. And that's okay. Everyone's on their own journey, but you don't need their validation to trust what you're experiencing. Here's what's actually happening. Your consciousness is outgrowing the identity you've been operating from. That old self, that old story, that old frequency, it's too small for you now. And when consciousness expands, but identity doesn't, you get this friction. You get the loop. Because your expanded awareness keeps trying to create new experiences, but your contracted identity keeps pulling you back into the old pattern. You're trying to live a new life from an old self, and it doesn't work. This is why the loop feels so suffocating. It's not just repetition, it's the feeling of your soul banging against the walls of a container that's too small. Every repeated conversation, every familiar disappointment, every déjà vu moment is your consciousness screaming, "There's more than this. We've outgrown this reality." But if you don't know how to consciously shift your identity, your frequency, your observation point, you just keep recycling the same experiences because that's all the old identity knows how to create. The other thing I need you to understand is that this process is actually sacred. In ancient mystery schools, what you're going through was called the dark night of the soul, or the dweller on the threshold. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the gap between identities. And it's supposed to be disorienting because you're dissolving an old reality before a new one has fully formed. You're in the quantum soup, and it's uncomfortable because humans crave certainty, and right now, everything is uncertain. But uncertainty is the most creative space that exists. When you're not locked into a known identity, a known story, a known outcome, you're in pure potential. The problem is, most people panic in this space. They rush to rebuild the old identity because at least it's familiar. They'd rather be comfortably miserable than uncomfortably free. But you're reading this, which means you're not most people. You're willing to stay in the discomfort long enough to break through to the other side. And here's the beautiful part. Once you understand what's happening, the loop isn't something that's happening to you, it's something you can use. It's feedback. Every time you notice the pattern repeating, it's showing you where you're still identified with the old frequency. It's showing you what needs to shift. The loop is a teacher. It's relentless, yes, but it's also precise. It will keep showing you the same thing until you get the lesson, until you make the shift, until you become a different observer. So no, you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not too sensitive or too analytical or too spiritual. You're exactly where you need to be. You're in the birth canal of a new reality, and birth is never comfortable. But what's on the other side? The freedom, the clarity, the power to consciously create your reality that's worth every uncomfortable moment you're experiencing right now. Let me explain what's really happening at the quantum level. In quantum physics, there's something called the observer effect. The act of observation collapses the wave function into a particle, into a specific reality. You are that observer. And every single moment, you're collapsing infinite possibilities into one experienced reality. But here's where it gets wild. If you observe from the same state of being, you collapse the same reality. You create what I call temporal echoes of moments that feel recycled because, energetically, they are. You're not experiencing new moments. You're re-experiencing the same moment with slight variations. Think of it like a record skipping. The needle is your consciousness, and it keeps hitting the same groove because it hasn't shifted to a new track. The loop isn't happening to you. You are the loop. Your identity, your story, your beliefs, your emotional frequency, they're all locked in a pattern, and that pattern is generating your reality on repeat. Now, let's go deeper into the quantum mechanics of this, because understanding the mechanics gives you the power to change them. In quantum field theory, particles exist in a state of superposition, meaning they exist as all possibilities simultaneously until they're observed. The moment observation occurs, the wave function collapses and one specific possibility becomes real. This isn't theory. This is proven, measurable science. Your life works the same way. Right now, there are infinite versions of your life existing as potential. There's a version where you're thriving financially, a version where you're in perfect health, A version where you're in a deeply fulfilling relationship. A version where you're doing work that sets your soul on fire. All of these exist right now as wave functions, as possibilities in the quantum field. But which one becomes your experienced reality depends entirely on the frequency from which you observe. Here's the crucial part. Observation isn't just what you look at with your eyes. Observation is your entire state of being. It's your emotional frequency, your beliefs, your self-concept, your expectations, your habitual thought patterns. All of these combine to create a vibrational signature, and that signature determines which probability field you collapse into material reality. If you wake up every day identified as someone who struggles financially, your consciousness is tuned to that frequency. And the quantum field responds by collapsing circumstances, opportunities, and events that match that frequency. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because it's a mirror. It reflects back the frequency of the observer, always, without exception. This is why positive thinking alone doesn't work. Because if you're trying to think positive thoughts while your emotional body is vibrating at the frequency of lack, fear, or unworthiness, the emotional frequency wins every time. Emotion is the language of the quantum field. Thought is just the surface level. You can affirm abundance all day long, but if your nervous system is conditioned to expect struggle, that's the reality you'll collapse. The observer loop happens when your emotional frequency, your self-concept, and your habitual thought patterns are all locked into the same configuration. You're like a radio stuck on one station. And that station keeps playing the same song, same themes, same stories, same outcomes because the frequency hasn't changed. You're not tuning into new possibilities because you're not broadcasting a new signal. Let's talk about temporal echoes more specifically. When you experience déjà vu, what's actually happening is that your consciousness is recognizing a pattern it's experienced before. But it's not a memory from this timeline, it's an echo from a parallel timeline or a previous loop iteration. You're picking up on the fact that you've collapsed this same moment before in a slightly different context. It's like watching a movie you've seen, but you can't quite remember when or where you watched it. That's because you're experiencing quantum overlap, multiple timelines bleeding into each other, because your consciousness is no longer locked into linear time. Time, as you experience it, is not fixed. It's not a river flowing in one direction. It's more like a hologram where all moments exist simultaneously, and your consciousness navigates through them based on frequency. When you're in the observer loop, you're navigating the same frequency band over and over, so you keep encountering the same holographic moments, just slightly rearranged. This is why you can feel like you're moving forward in time. Days pass, weeks pass, but nothing actually changes. Because you're not moving through new moments. You're circling through the same energetic territory. Einstein proved that time is relative, that it bends and stretches depending on the observer's velocity and gravitational field. But what science is only beginning to understand is that consciousness also affects time. Your state of consciousness determines your experience of time. When you're in a high-frequency state, joy, creativity, flow, time expands. Hours feel like minutes. When you're in a low-frequency state, anxiety, depression, fear, time contracts. Minutes feel like hours. And when you're in the observer loop, time starts to feel non-linear, glitchy, broken, because you're no longer moving through time in a coherent way. You're jumping between temporal nodes that carry the same frequency, and your brain struggles to make sense of it. This is also why certain people, places, or situations feel like energy vampires. It's not that they're literally stealing your energy, it's that they're resonating in a frequency that matches a lower version of you. When you interact with them, your consciousness automatically tunes to that frequency to match the interaction. And if that frequency is one you've been trying to move away from, it feels draining because you're being pulled back into an old loop. Your system recognizes it and resists it, But if you don't consciously shift your frequency, you'll get pulled in every time. Here's another critical piece. The quantum field doesn't respond to your words. It doesn't respond to your intentions. It responds to your state of being. You can say, "I am abundant," 1,000 times. But if your body is tense, if your chest is tight, if you're scanning your environment for evidence of liqueur in the frequency of scarcity, and the field will match that. This is why manifestation feels so frustrating for people in the loop. They're doing all the techniques, saying all the affirmations, visualizing all the visions, but their foundational frequency hasn't shifted. So they keep collapsing the same reality with different window dressing. The observer loop is also self-reinforcing, which is why it's so hard to break. Every time you collapse the same reality, you gather more evidence that this is how things are. That evidence strengthens the belief. The belief reinforces the frequency. The frequency collapses more of the same reality. It's a closed circuit, a feedback loop that gets tighter and tighter until you consciously interrupt it. And here's the most important thing to understand. You cannot think your way out of this. The mind is part of the loop. Your thoughts are generated by the same neural patterns that created the problem. You can't use the problem to solve the problem. You can't use the same level of consciousness that created the loop to dissolve the loop. You have to transcend it. You have to become a different observer. And that requires a shift not in what you think, but in what you are. So, how do you break it? You don't think your way out. You don't affirm your way out. You don't even visualize your way out. You collapse the loop by becoming a different observer. Here's the key. You can't observe the loop from inside the loop. You have to observe the observer. You have to step into a meta-awareness where you're no longer identified with the person who's stuck you're witnessing them. And the moment you do that, the loop breaks because you've changed the frequency of observation. This is what they call transcendence in spirituality, but it's not mystical, it's mechanical. You're shifting the vibrational signature of your consciousness, and when you do that, you collapse a different probability field, a new timeline, a new reality. Immediately, not tomorrow, not after you do the work, not when you're ready. The moment you observe from a new state of being, reality reorganizes itself around that observation, instantaneously, because reality isn't solidets responsive. It's a living, breathing field that reflects the frequency of the observer. Let me break down exactly what observing the observer means, because this is where most people get tripped up. They hear, "Witness your thoughts," and they think it means watching their thoughts like a passive observer. But that's still identification. You're still the person watching thoughts. You're still inside the loop, just one layer removed. True meta-awareness is when you recognize that the person watching the thoughts is also a construct. It's also part of the identity you've built. When you can observe that observer, when you can witness the witness who step into pure consciousness, you become the awareness itself, not the person who's aware. And from that place, identity becomes fluid. You're no longer locked into, "I am this person with this history, these problems, these limitations." You become pure potential, able to collapse into any version of yourself. This is the difference between self-improvement and self-transcendence. Self-improvement is when you try to fix the person in the loop. You read books, you go to therapy, you do morning routines, you work on your mindset. And all of that is valuable, but it's still operating from within the same identity. You're just trying to make the person in the loop better, more healed, more optimized. But the loop remains because the fundamental frequency hasn't shifted. Self-transcendence is when you realize you're not that person. You never were. That person is a character you've been playing, a frequency you've been embodying, a story you've been telling. And the moment you stop identifying with that character, you can choose a different one. You can collapse into a different version of yourself. Not through effort or willpower, but through recognition. Through seeing that you are not the loop who are the awareness that's been observing the loop. Here's a practical way to access this. Right now, notice that you're reading these words. Notice that there's an awareness of reading happening. Now notice the awareness that's aware of reading. Who is that? Can you find it? Can you locate where that awareness lives? If you really look, you'll find that you can't. Because awareness isn't a thing. It's not located anywhere. It's the space in which all experience occurs. And when you rest as that awareness, when you stop trying to be a person and simply be the presence that's aware of the person, the loop collapses. From this place of pure awareness, you can choose a new frequency like you choose a radio station. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to heal enough or grow enough or become worthy enough. You just tune into it. You embody it. You become it. And the moment you do, the quantum field responds. Reality shifts, not because you forced it or manipulated it, but because you've changed the observer. And reality has no choice but to match the frequency of observation. This is why transformation can happen in an instant. Because consciousness doesn't operate on linear time. A shift in frequency is immediate. The moment you embody a new state, you're collapsing a new probability field. The external circumstances might take time to catch up. The 3D world has momentum. There's a lag between frequency shift and material manifestation. But the shift itself is instantaneous. The new reality is already collapsing the moment you become the new observer. Let me give you another angle on this. Think about actors. When an actor fully embodies a character, they're not pretending. In that moment, they are that character. Their body language changes, their voice changes, their thoughts change. They've collapsed into a different identity. And if they're a good actor, you believe it. You forget they're acting because they've fully become someone else. You've been doing this your whole life, except you didn't know you were acting. You've been playing a character called me, and you've played it so convincingly that you forgot it was a role. You think that's who you are, but it's not. It's who you've been observing yourself as. And the moment you recognize it's a role, you can choose a different one. You can embody a different character, a different frequency, a different version of yourself, not as a fake persona, but as a genuine expression of a different probability field. The reason most people stay stuck is because they're trying to change from within the character. They're trying to make the character better, heal the character, fix the character, but the character is the loop. The only way out is to step outside the character entirely. Recognize yourself as the awareness that's been playing the character, and then consciously choose a new character to embody. A new frequency, a new identity, a new you. And when you do this, something magical happens. The people in your life either shift to match your new frequency, or they fall away. New people appear who resonate with the new you. New opportunities show up that weren't visible from the old frequency. Synchronicities explode. Things that felt hard become effortless. Because you're no longer swimming against the current of your own frequency. You're in alignment. You're coherent. You're collapsing reality from a clear, intentional state of being rather than from unconscious programming. This is the breakthrough. This is the shift. This is how you break the observer loop, not by trying harder, not by doing more, not by fixing yourself, but by recognizing you are not the self that needs fixing. You are the awareness that can choose any self, any frequency, any reality. And the moment you step into that power, everything changes. I know this because I lived it. For years, I was trapped in a loop so tight I could predict conversations before they happened. I'd meet new people, and feel like I'd already known them. I'd have experiences that felt like memories. Time felt broken. I felt like I was in a simulation that was glitching, and I tried everything: meditation, therapy, journaling, manifestation techniques. Nothing worked, because I was still the same person trying to escape. I was the hamster on the wheel, thinking if I just ran faster, I'd get somewhere. Let me take you back to where this started for me. It was about 7 years ago. On the surface, my life looked fine. I had a decent job, a relationship, friends, routines. But underneath, I felt like I was suffocating. Every day felt exactly the same. I'd wake up with the same heaviness in my chest, have the same conversations, face the same challenges, go to bed with the same restless feeling that there had to be more than this. I started noticing the repetition everywhere. My partner and I were having the same arguments every few weeks, just with different triggers. My coworkers would say things, and I'd think, we've had this exact conversation before. I'd drive to work and suddenly feel like I'd lived that exact morning 100 times. The déjà vu was constant and unsettling. Then the timeline weirdness started. I'd remember events that apparently never happened. I'd reference conversations I was certain we'd had, and people would look at me confused. I started questioning my memory, my sanity. I went to doctors thinking something was neurologically wrong. All the tests came back normal. They suggested I was stressed, maybe depressed. They offered me medication. I tried it. It dulled the awareness, but didn't change anything. The loop was still there, I just cared less about it. So I went the spiritual route. I read every book. I tried every technique. Morning meditations, gratitude journals, vision boards, affirmations, energy healing, you name it. And here's what I discovered. All of it made me more aware of the loop, but none of it broke the loop. I could feel myself stuck. I could see the pattern. I could articulate what was happening, but I couldn't get out. The worst part was the isolation. I'd try to explain what I was experiencing to friends, and they'd either think I was having a breakdown or they'd give me surface-level advice that didn't touch what I was actually going through. Just be present. Practice gratitude. You're overthinking. It felt like screaming underwater. I could see people's mouths moving, but they weren't hearing me, and I wasn't hearing them. We were on different frequencies. I started withdrawing, stopped going out as much, stopped sharing what I was experiencing. I became obsessed with understanding it. I dove into quantum physics, studied consciousness research, explored ancient mysticism. I was trying to think my way out. And the more I learned, the more trapped I felt. Because I could understand the loop intellectually, but I was still living it. Then one day, and I remember this so vividly, I was sitting in my car in a parking lot, and I just stopped. I stopped trying to figure it out. I stopped trying to fix it. I stopped trying to be different. I just sat there and watched myself. I watched the thoughts spinning. This is never going to change. I'm broken. I'm stuck forever. I watched the feeling in my chest, the tightness, the despair. And instead of identifying with it, instead of being the person experiencing those thoughts and feelings, I just observed them. And in that observation, there was this split second of pure silence, a gap. And in that gap, I felt something I'd never felt before. I felt myself as separate from all of it. Not the person with the problem, just awareness, pure, vast, untouchable awareness. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds, everything I thought I was dissolved. When I came back to normal consciousness, I was crying. Not sad crying, but relief crying, because I'd seen it. I'd seen that I wasn't the loop. I wasn't the person trapped. I wasn't the story. I was the space in which all of it was happening. And if I was that space, then I could choose what happened in that space. I didn't fully understand what had occurred, but I knew something fundamental had shifted. I drove home, and on the drive, my phone rang. It was someone I hadn't spoken to in over 3 years, calling out of nowhere with an opportunity that perfectly aligned with something I'd wanted but had given up on. When I got home, there was an email from someone I'd reached out to months ago who'd never responded, suddenly responding with enthusiasm. Within 48 hours, my entire reality had reorganized itself. But here's what I want you to understand. The external changes weren't the real shift. The real shift was internal. I was different. I was no longer identified with the person who was stuck. I was no longer collapsing reality from a frequency of limitation and frustration. I was observing from a completely different state of being, and reality had no choice but to match it. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. The relationship that had been stuck in a loop either needed to evolve or ended, and it felt like a relief rather than a loss. My job situation shifted in ways I couldn't have predicted. People I've been trying to connect with for years suddenly reached out. But more than any of that, I felt free. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. And the loop? It didn't disappear completely, but I was no longer trapped in it. Now when I notice a pattern repeating, I recognize it as feedback. It's showing me where I'm still identified with an old frequency. And instead of fighting it or trying to figure it out, I just observe it. I observe the observer. I step back into that awareness space, and the pattern shifts. This is what I want for you. Not to bypass the discomfort, not to spiritually bypass the work of transformation, but to recognize that you have the power to step outside the loop anytime you choose. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to heal enough first. You just need to recognize what you actually are, not the person in the loop, but the awareness observing the loop. And from that recognition, everything changes. So here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to write this in the comments, not because I need you to, but because the act of declaring it collapses a new timeline for you. Write, I am coherent with my highest timeline. Say it out loud. Feel it. Don't just read it, embody it. Because those words aren't just a sentence. They're a frequency. They're a command to the quantum field. You're telling the universe, I'm no longer collapsing the old pattern. I'm collapsing the highest possibility. And when you declare that, reality has no choice but to respond. But let's go deeper into why this specific phrase works, because I want you to understand the mechanics of what you're doing when you say it. The word coherent is crucial. In quantum physics, coherence means all parts of a system are aligned and working in harmony. A coherent wave has all its parts oscillating in sync. When you declare, I am coherent, you're commanding your entire being, mind, body, emotions, energy field to align with a single frequency. You're ending the internal conflict where part of you wants one thing and another part sabotages it. You're becoming a unified field. Highest timeline is a quantum statement. It's acknowledging that multiple timelines exist simultaneously, and you're making a conscious choice to collapse into the one that represents your most expanded possibility. Not the timeline where you play it safe. Not the timeline where you stay comfortable. Not the timeline where you keep repeating the same patterns. The highest one. The one where you're fully expressed, fully alive, fully yourself. When you combine these I am coherent with my highest timeline, you're doing several things at once. You're claiming a new identity. You're speaking from the place of already being that person who exists on the highest timeline. Not I want to be, or I hope to be, or I'm trying to be. I am. Present tense. Already done. This is how you collapse probability into reality. You speak as if it's already true, because in the quantum field, it is. You're sending a signal to the universe. Your words carry frequency. When you speak this declaration, you're broadcasting a new signal. And the universe, being a responsive field, immediately begins reorganizing circumstances, people, and events to match that signal. It's not magic. It's physics. It's how reality works. You're creating a reference point for your consciousness. Your consciousness needs direction. Left to its default programming, it will continue running the old patterns. But when you give it a clear command, a clear frequency to embody, it has something to align with. This phrase becomes an anchor. Every time you say it, you're tuning back into that frequency. You're making it public. There's power in declaration. When you write it in the comments, when you say it out loud, you're making it real in the 3D world. You're taking it out of the private realm of your mind and giving it physical form. This amplifies the collapse. It makes the new timeline more solid, more real, more imminent. Now, some of you are going to resist this. Part of you is going to say, "That's too simple. It can't be that easy. I need to do more, heal more, understand more." That's the loop talking. That's the old identity trying to maintain itself. It wants you to believe that transformation is complicated, that it requires years of work, that you're not ready yet. Because as long as you believe that, it gets to stay alive. But transformation isn't complicated. It's instant. The moment you embody a new frequency, you are transformed. The moment you speak as the person on the highest timeline, you become that person. Not eventually. No. The lag is just the 3D reality catching up to the shift that's already happened in consciousness. So write it now. Don't wait. Don't think about it. Don't analyze it. Just do it. I am coherent with my highest timeline. Feel what happens in your body when you say it. Notice if there's resistance, if there's doubt, if there's a voice that says, "But what if it doesn't work?" That's the old frequency. Don't fight it. Just notice it and say the phrase again. Keep saying it until you feel a shift, until you feel something crack open, until you feel yourself expand into a new possibility. This is your activation. This is your exit from the loop. Not because the words are magic, but because you're using the words to consciously choose a new frequency. And that choice, that conscious act of alignment, is what collapses the new reality. Once you break the observer loop, everything changes. Not gradually, immediately. You'll start noticing synchronicities so precise, they'll take your breath away. You'll have thoughts, and reality will reflect them back within hours. You'll meet people who speak the exact words you needed to hear. Doors will open that were invisible before. Time will feel different, fluid, expansive, like you're operating outside the normal constraints. You'll stop feeling like life is happening to you, and you'll start knowing that you're the one collapsing it into form. You'll see the world as it truly is, a field of infinite potential, waiting for you to observe it into being. Let me tell you what this actually looks like in practice, because I want you to know what's waiting for you on the other side of this shift. First, the synchronicities. And I'm not talking about the occasional coincidence that makes you smile. I'm talking about reality bending itself around your thoughts with such precision that it becomes undeniable. You'll think about someone you haven't spoken to in years, and within an hour, they'll reach out. You'll have a random thought about needing a specific piece of information, and you'll stumble across it within minutes. You'll set an intention in the morning, and by evening, circumstances will have aligned in ways you couldn't have orchestrated. This isn't luck. This isn't coincidence. This is what happens when you're coherent with your highest timeline. The quantum field responds instantly to your frequency because you're no longer sending mixed signals. You're not wanting one thing while believing another. You're not hoping for change while identifying with the old story. You're unified, and a unified consciousness collapses reality with terrifying precision. Second, your relationship with time transforms completely. Right now, time might feel like it's controlling you, never enough of it, always running out, always behind. But when you break the observer loop, you step into what's called vertical time. This is when you're no longer just moving through time horizontally, day by day, hour by hour. You're accessing multiple timelines simultaneously. You're pulling information, opportunities, and possibilities from parallel realities into this one. Practically, this means you'll accomplish in weeks what used to take years. Not because you're working harder, but because you're working from a different frequency. You're no longer swimming upstream against your own resistance. You're in flow. And in flow, the universe conspires to move obstacles out of your way before you even encounter them. You'll also notice that the right people show up at exactly the right time. And I mean exactly. You'll be thinking about needing help with something specific, and someone with that exact skill set will enter your life seemingly out of nowhere. You'll be ready to learn something new, and a teacher will appear. You'll be standing at a crossroads, uncertain which direction to take, and someone will say something casual in conversation that gives you the exact clarity you needed. This is not random. This is the quantum field organizing itself around your new frequency. When you're in the loop, you keep attracting the same types of people because you're broadcasting the same signal. But when you break free, when you become coherent with your highest timeline, you start magnetizing people who match that higher frequency. Soul family members, collaborators, mentors, people who see you not as who you were, but as who you're becoming. Your intuition will sharpen to the point where it becomes your primary navigation system. You'll know things before you can explain how you know them. You'll walk into situations and immediately sense whether they're aligned or not. You'll meet people and instantly feel whether they're part of your new reality or remnants of the old one. And you'll trust this knowing because you'll have seen it proven right so many times that doubt becomes irrelevant. Here's something else that happens. Your tolerance for the old patterns drops to zero. Things that you used to tolerate: toxic relationships, unfulfilling work, environments that drain you, become intolerable. Not in a judgmental way, but in a clear, decisive way. You'll simply know that certain things are no longer compatible with the frequency you're embodying, and you'll let them go without the drama and anguish that used to accompany endings. This can be uncomfortable for people around you who are still invested in the old version of you. They might accuse you of changing, of becoming different, of leaving them behind. And you are changing. You are becoming different. But you're not leaving anyone behind, you're just no longer willing to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. And the people who are meant to be in your new reality will rise to meet you. The ones who aren't will naturally fall away. And that's okay. That's part of the process. Your physical body will also respond to this shift. Many people report that chronic issues they've carried for years suddenly resolve. Not because they did anything specific to heal them, but because the frequency that was holding the pattern in place dissolved. Your body is a direct reflection of your consciousness. When your consciousness shifts, your body has no choice but to reorganize itself around that new frequency. You might find yourself needing less sleep but feeling more energized. You might find that foods you used to crave no longer appeal to you. You might find yourself naturally drawn to activities that support your new frequency: movement, nature, creative expression without having to force yourself. Your body knows what it needs to maintain coherence with your highest timeline. You just have to listen. Your creativity will explode. Ideas will flow through you with such intensity that you'll struggle to capture them all. You'll have insights, breakthroughs, solutions to problems that have stumped you for years. This is because creativity isn't something you have to manufacture. It's your natural state when you're not blocked by the old patterns. When the loop breaks, the creative channel opens, and you become a conduit for inspiration, innovation, and original thought. You'll also develop what some call reality creation speed. This is when the gap between intention and manifestation shrinks dramatically. Where it used to take months or years to see results from your efforts, you'll start seeing results in days or weeks. Where you used to have to work hard and struggle to make things happen, you'll find that things start happening through you. Opportunities will present themselves. Resources will appear. Doors will open. And all you have to do is show up and say yes. But here's the most profound shift. You'll stop feeling separate from life. Right now, you might feel like you're on one side and life is on the other, like you're trying to make things happen, trying to control outcomes, trying to force reality to bend to your will. But when you break the observer loop, you realize you're not separate from reality. You are reality. You're not trying to create your life, you are the creative force. You're not trying to manifest abundance, you are abundance. You're not trying to become whole, already are whole. This realization changes everything. Because when you know yourself as the source rather than someone seeking the source, desperation dissolves. Anxiety dissolves. The need to control dissolves. You become so rooted in your own being, so clear about your own frequency, that external circumstances lose their power over you. You're no longer reactive. You're responsive. You're no longer at the mercy of what happens. You're the one determining what happens through the frequency you embody. And perhaps most importantly, you'll feel free, genuinely, deeply free. Free from the weight of the past. Free from the anxiety about the future. Free from the prison of the old identity. You'll feel like you can breathe for the first time in your life. Like a weight you didn't even know you were carrying has been lifted. Like you've stepped out of a dark room into brilliant sunlight. This freedom isn't about escaping responsibility or avoiding challenges. Life will still present obstacles, difficulties, moments that test you, but you'll meet them from a completely different place. You'll meet them as the observer, not the victim. As the creator, not the created. As the one who can choose how to respond, how to interpret, how to transform any situation into an opportunity for expansion. This is what's waiting for you on the other side of the observer loop. This is your natural state. This is who you actually are when you're not trapped in the repetition, the limitation, the old story. This is the reality you were born to experience. And it's not somewhere in the distant future. It's not something you have to earn through years of suffering and self-improvement. It's available right now, in this moment. The moment you choose to observe from a different frequency. The moment you declare, I am coherent with my highest timeline. The moment you stop being the person in the loop and recognize yourself as the awareness that can collapse any reality it chooses. This isn't about becoming superhuman. This is about remembering you already are. You're not limited by biology, by circumstance, by the past. You're a quantum observer with the power to collapse any reality you choose. And the moment you step into that knowing, the loop breaks. And you're free. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Write it in the comments. Say it out loud. Feel it in every cell of your body. I am coherent with my highest timeline. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait until you feel ready. The readiness comes from the declaration, not before it. You become ready by choosing. You become worthy by recognizing you already are. You step into your highest timeline by claiming it now. This is your moment. This is your activation. This is where everything changes. The observer loop ends the moment you choose to observe from a new place. And that moment is now. Your new reality is waiting. Step into it.